Hello, and welcome to the Torah Outreach Program, Erev Shabbos, Burst of Inspiration. Today's Burst of Inspiration is sponsored by Mr. Howie and Mrs. Carrol Bienenfeld as a Zechus for Refuah Shaliema, Baruch Yered, Brina, Sorah. May all the Torah that is learned from this video bring a Refuah Shaliema to Yered Bienenfeld. Baruch Yered Brina, Sorah. This week's Parsha, Parshas Vaera, second Parsha in the book of Shmos. We begin the famous 10 plagues. 7 of the 10 are in this week's Parsha, and the last 3 are in next week's. The first 3, Dam, water turned to blood. The Egyptian magicians somehow were able to copy that plague. Sleight of hand, black magic, call it what you will. But Pharaoh therefore was able to brush it off and tell Moshe and Aaron, it's trickery. My people can do that too. Big deal. Second plague, frogs. The entire country was covered in frogs everywhere where they slept, where they ate. Got into the food, got into the systems, everything. But the magicians were able to copy it, so Pharaoh blew it off. Third plague, Kenim, lice. The ground itself turned to lice, which tortured the Egyptians because they crawled everywhere. And then the magicians came to Pharaoh and said, can't do it. We can't copy this. And they had to admit, they said, Etzba Elokim hi. This is the finger of God. This is godly. This is a real plague. But notice the wording. Etzba Elokim hi. This one, we got to admit, can't do this one. It's godly. This one. And the others, since this one is beyond your grasp, why can't you admit the others are too? Nope. Only this one. My Rebbe, Rabbi Yisroel Bodkins, said it's typical human nature of an arrogant person. An arrogant person, if they can find any way to circumvent the truth, even if it's staring them in the face, one thing they hate to do is admit they're wrong. The ability to admit you're wrong is a very, very big part of being a Jew. That's why the rabbis teach us that Hashem says, I can't live in the same world, in the same place as an arrogant person. Why not? What does that mean? He can't live. God can do anything. It means he can't exist in our idea if we're arrogant. Because no matter what we see, no matter what happens, we're going to find some way to excuse ourselves. And we're going to find some way to not believe what's in front of our eyes. We're told to see everything that happens as Yad Hashem, God's hand. Etzba Elokim, God's finger. God made this happen. We're told to inculcate that into our systems. Make that a part of us. By doing that, we bring ourselves closer to God because we bring more of an awareness of God's presence at all times. We make brachos, blessings, 100 times a day to constantly remind ourselves, God's over our shoulder, God's right there, He's taking care of us. But an arrogant person can't do that because no matter what happens, they're going to hold on to what they believe, even if they're proved wrong in their face. If it's against something that they want to believe, they'll find some way of ignoring it. I think it was about a year ago. There was an incredible miracle that happened over the land of Israel. The Iranians sent hundreds upon hundreds of drones, ballistic missiles, short-range missiles, long-range missiles. And the Israelis protected themselves with their technology, with the help of the Jordanians, and the help of the Egyptians, and the help of the Americans. And between everything, they were 99.9% successful. One Bedouin little girl, 14-year-old girl, was injured, sent to the hospital, and came back fine. Now, we're going to say incredible technology, incredible science. Good thing for the Americans, and good thing the Egyptians didn't want the Iranians to blow us up, and the Jordanians. But there's a physicist who wrote a letter that was publicized. A scientist. I don't know if he was a religious man or not. I don't think he was. He worked for it at one time, the Israeli Defense Force. And he wrote, with all the protection that we had, with all the new technology, had it been 90% successful, 90% successful, this is what he wrote, I would have said, that's miraculous. But as I said before, it wasn't 90% successful. It was 99.9% successful. When those missiles are hit, they fall out of the air. Every single one of them fell in deserted areas. The Dead Sea, the Negev Desert, the Midbar Yehuda, the Judean Desert. Israel's not a big place. There aren't that many desolate areas. But somehow every single one of those missiles, when they fell out of the air, they hit those desolate areas. And a lot of the missiles didn't even make it to Israel. They blew up in Iran before they even met the defense. This was a miracle beyond compare of anything that has happened in modern history. And I was bantering with somebody that I know, sending each other emails, a man who was a self-proclaimed agnostic. And I sent him this letter from the physicist. And I said, how do you answer this? And I said, here's a scientist who said this is miraculous. And he said, I'll show you 100 scientists who disagree with him. And I said, I'll show you, and I wrote back, I'll show you a scientist who believes that the world is flat. And then instead of arguing, we just started insulting me. And you're comparing science to some crackpots that think the world is, no, I'm comparing a scientist who admits the truth, who sees the truth in front of his face and says miraculous, to a bunch of crackpots who are too arrogant to admit the truth. Somebody who is arrogant, no matter what you hit them with, no matter what you show them, it won't make a difference. We, however, have an obligation to see everything Etz Belokim. Not Etz Belokim he, Etz Belokim. Everything is God. Everything is God's doing. The more we bring God into our lives, the happier our lives will be. Shabbos.